What we found in the blockchain space is that the people who had money didn't want to spend it, and the people who didn't have money needed the help. That a lot of the new tech is very recommendation focused, not action focused. What we found with these traders was they have thousands of cryptocurrencies that they're out there trading. Ultimately, convinced an investor to give us a term sheet for that business. And then the next day, FTX, the big exchange, crashed. So you can use the tech that's out there to get a good recommendation. You can't necessarily trust it to go take an action. So I've been living in the mine shaft for maybe the last 2.5 years in this AI space, trying to get a company off the ground, and have a lot of lessons learned from doing that. And would like to share some of those lessons with you today. Maybe just a little bit about me. So I founded this company called Lockchain, but really I'm a kind of a recovering cybersecurity executive. So I've had the opportunity to run 2 or 3 companies, an MSP in Europe, which is a managed service provider that is built of like 25 acquisitions, a big cybersecurity company in Europe that we took from 5 million to 250 million over a few years. And then before that, I was a researcher at Georgia Tech and spent a lot of time there. I actually participated in a program very much like this for executives around cybersecurity. So I appreciate the opportunity to come speak today. I was the CEO of this company, Cybersecurity, for about 7 years, and did like 250 board meetings, and decided that I wanted to be an entrepreneur and not do that anymore. And so I and a co-founder who happened to be my biggest competitor, he left his job as a CEO. I left my job as a CEO at the same time. We wrote 5 PowerPoint slides, and we started to try and raise money. That was a humbling experience. We did something like 212 meetings over the course of about 3 months. And we had this bright idea to go try and build a cybersecurity business around blockchain. Blockchain at the time was at its previous, kind of 2 cycles ago, was at its height. And we thought there might be an opportunity to go build kind of a category defining security company. So we wrote some PowerPoint slides, went and talked to a bunch of investors, ultimately convinced an investor to give us a term sheet for that business. And then the next day, FTX, the big exchange, crashed. And they ripped that term sheet out from underneath us the next day. And then fortunately found somebody after that who funded us, a firm here in New York called Lair Hippo, and got to going. 3 months into that journey, we decided that we were totally wrong. What we found in the blockchain space is that the people who had money didn't want to spend it, and the people who didn't have money needed the help. And that's kind of a tough market to go sell to with security services. So we had a little bit of a midlife company crisis and decided to pivot the company. Very luckily, I had a lunch with a trader just by happenstance at kind of one of the big firms on Wall Street about what they were doing in blockchain. And what I found was that they had no cybersecurity support whatsoever. They were out there kind of making trades in the blockchain space without basically any help. And they described it as throwing darts into the wind with a blindfold on. That's true. And so we found this great white space. And at the time, we thought, man, there's a real opportunity to bring AI into this environment to help. And what can we do for these traders? And so we kind of pivoted the company towards helping traders. So the problem that we solve, and I won't spend much time on this, but just for some context, what we found with these traders was they have thousands of cryptocurrencies that they're out there trading. They're either trading them, they're looking at them, or they're thinking about trading them. And they have a requirement from the Security and Exchange Commission or other trading regulatory environments to go do diligence on those equities or cryptocurrencies that they're trading. And there's this kind of ever-changing risk profile. And basically every trader that we met with 100 traders over about 60 days. And we found that none of them were doing any diligence kind of whatsoever, literally throwing into the wind blindly. We went and met with some of the bigger trading houses and also some of the crypto exchanges out there. And what we found was that they were doing a little bit better. They hired a bunch of $1,000 an hour consultants to go do the risk monitoring for them, to kind of build these spreadsheets of risk and hand them back to them over the course of like 60 days. That's how long it would take. We said, let's go build a platform to kind of solve that. So how can we automate kind of a risk management process for people who want to trade crypto, kind of under the auspices of, eventually you'll be able to trade crypto in your retirement account or your Schwab account or your JP Morgan account kind of as this technology and as crypto kind of reaches the market. And so we moved the company and named it Lockchain.ai, and we basically do three things. So one is we monitor transactions. So if you're a bank or a trading house or kind of just a whale, someone with a lot of money trading, we monitor those transactions on your behalf and tell you if anything weird's going on. The second thing that we do is we do event detection. So anything that you own or happen to have in your wallet, we tell you if risky things are going on with that. That's particularly valuable when some major event is going on. Maybe someone gets hacked, or maybe there's a big liquidity event, or there's some new regulatory action by the Trump administration. Like that kind of data we get to the traders very fast. And then kind of our core capability is always on risk management. So we basically diligence cryptocurrencies on behalf of big financial institutions. So they want to go trade something new, like Coinbase or some exchange wants to trade something new, allow their customers to trade something new. They've got a requirement to do a diligence on that. We do it for them. We replace a process that kind of previously took 90 days with a platform that can do it in about an hour with the help of AI. It allows them to kind of get to liquidity faster because they can bring tokens to the market faster. And what we found is that this diligence capability is pretty valuable across a lot of the financial landscape. You know, today we support exchanges with their listing services as they bring on new tokens, big trading firms as they want to go trade, over-the-counter desks that are doing kind of more conventional trading. It helps other diligence firms that are out there. There's a lot of consulting firms that kind of need this capability, insurance firms that are underwriting blockchain firms, to just builders that are building crypto tech and they want to bring blockchain, new cryptocurrencies onto their blockchain platform. They use our platform to know what's going on. So that's what we do, just a little bit of background. So let's talk about the AI implications. So I used to run a company that did something very similar to what we do at Lockchain, but in a slightly different space. And we did it with humans. So we had about 500 customers on our platform. We were monitoring risk for a certain type of activity, and then we would alert the customer when that risk came to fruition or risk profile increased. We did it with the big service desks. So we had about 200 analysts in Switzerland, about 200 analysts in Spain, a couple hundred analysts in the US. And we were just looking at data from all across the ecosystem of these big banks we were supporting in a different space, but banks, about what was going on. An analyst would look at data, they'd write a report, it'd go to another analyst, they'd validate the report, it'd go to another analyst, they'd validate it again, and then it'd get translated into a bunch of languages, and then it gets validated again, and then it eventually ends up in front of the customer after some lawyers. So a company supporting a fairly large number of customers with a service desk of several hundred, not to mention 60 or 70 developers, kind of keeping that whole thing going. I'm doing the exact same thing at Lockchain, different space, same concept, but I'm doing it with 10 people. Okay, and AI is basically what's enabled that. So we do all of the analysis, all the data collection, all the data formatting, all the translating, all the formatting, all the source verification, all the legal work. We do it all with AI. That has allowed us to build a company that has extremely high margins and can grow at enormous scale with higher quality results, faster results, as well as the ability to be incredibly nimble as requirements change. Previous company, if a customer came in and they wanted some change to how we do things, you know, they wanted some new data source, or they wanted some new regulatory requirement to be met. I mean, that was a change order that took weeks to months to go implement into our system. Here, a customer comes to us and wants changes. We're changing a few AI prompts and deploying it kind of same day. So not only are we getting the scale, we're also getting speed. And I could probably do a whole nother conversation on how AI is impacting our operations, from software development to financial management to marketing. I mean, that'd be a whole separate presentation, but it's what is really kind of, as a new company that's been in the market a couple of years, I'm running a company with extremely few number of people to get a lot of jobs done with the help of this tech. This is our retrieval augmented generation pipeline. Basically, this is how we process data through the AI. One point I want to make about what I've seen with a lot of AI companies is they kind of enter the enterprise. So my customers are highly regulated banks and financial institutions, or very small, very nimble kind of trading houses, 10, 15 type traders in an office around here, or a big bank. there are requirements to get into their environment. I can't just give them an AI solution. I've got to meet their security requirements. I got to meet their authentication requirements. I got to meet their auditing requirements. I got to meet their regulatory requirements. And it's just got to work. That's also the problem. The other problem we've ran into, and I think this is maybe the key point from the presentation, is this AI tech works really great when it is in an isolated environment on public data where it's just making a recommendation. So you want some new image generated, you want some document created, you want feedback on should I trade or should I not trade, should I go left, should I go right. Like the AI tech that's on the market today from OpenAI and the others does a really great job of that. Where there are challenges and where companies like us have had a lot of success is kind of bringing that tech into the enterprise where there's just a lot more requirements to go deal with. And so we have generated this pipeline where we take in about 2 million documents a day about all the cryptocurrencies that we monitor. I say documents, but I really mean kind of data sources. We bring in all that data and we run it through this kind of huge pipeline that I won't walk you through to get that data in, to get it in the right format so the AI can take it, to source it properly, to validate the sources that we're bringing in, to run it through the AI, make customer-specific modifications, validate the outputs. When there are errors in the outputs, push it back through the pipeline continuously, pipe it to the customer, get feedback. The point I'll make is that there's like 10 or 15 steps here. Exactly one of them is AI, right? Like we bring all that data in, like one step is AI. The rest is doing all of this data validation and all this data cleaning that's required to make this AI really work in the enterprise. And I think it's my lesson over the last couple of years is this is where most big enterprises are kind of falling on themselves, is that, yeah, they can go pipe data into OpenAI or ChatGPT or Claude or whatever and get the results they want one time. But if they need repeatable results with low false positives, no hallucinations, and they want it to work at scale, they just kind of struggle. And the reason I know that is 100% of our installs, we are replacing an internal customer team that's just doing it themselves. They are doing what we do, which is trying to generate risk management reports on cryptocurrencies using OpenAI or someone else. And they're able to do it for kind of one or two currencies, 1 or 2 times. But the second that they have to go scale it up to the kind of scale we work at, which is thousands of currencies, and to do it in such a way that the false positive rate is really low and the result quality is very high, they just fall on themselves. It just doesn't work. And so the major point that I would make is, and I'll talk about it some more, is there's work to do to bring this tech into the enterprise. Like it just doesn't work out of the box. And that's why I think there's a lot of space for firms like mine that kind of take what is very good technology and kind of wrap it with this kind of enterprise layer to make it work. So I'll just make a few points. Again, kind of the insights that I've seen. The first thing I'll say is that the technology is moving fast. I think everybody knows that. You probably heard that today and we'll hear it tomorrow or the next day. We, as a firm trying to help big enterprises leverage this tech, struggle to keep up with it. It's a fundamental problem. There's a new model, there's a new firm out there kind of every day with something new. What we find is that a lot of the new tech is very recommendation focused, not action focused. So you can use the tech that's out there to get a good recommendation, but you can't necessarily trust it to go take an action, kind of because of all the problems you see out there, from bad source data to hallucination challenges to bad formatting. And one thing I would challenge you to do is go to ChatGPT or one of the other AI engines and pipe it the same question like 5 days in a row and see if you get the same answer. And I think you'll find that you won't. It's one challenge that our customers have, because our customers have an expectation of 0 false positives. So there can be no bad data, there could be no hallucinations, there could be no bad sources. Has to be right every time, all the time. And my experience to date is that that's tough to pull off, and it's tough to pull off by yourself, certainly. We've talked about the enterprise rails. The other thing that I've seen is that the tech is moving so fast that speed is often the priority, kind of one firm trying to get the next model out before the next firm. That just leads to a ton of accuracy problems. The testing that needs to happen isn't necessarily happening. The other thing I've seen is that kind of everyone expects this technology to replace headcount. And certainly that's happening. I mean, I'm at a customer today where they just laid off a team of 90 because of our platform. Like, that's great for me, not for them, but it's a sign that technology is working. But what I've seen at most customers is the way they're thinking about it is not headcount reduction. They're thinking about it as really margin improvement. Can I shift some roles around? Can I reduce my cost to deliver? That may lead to headcount reduction, but I think headcount reduction is probably the wrong way to think about it. I think margin improvement is the terminology that makes the most sense to me. And the other thing I'll say is security, and I'm a cybersecurity guy, it's kind of all over the place. The example I would give you is there's a lot of companies out there today trying to put LLMs in front of very sensitive databases. That works great if the person sitting in front of the AI prompt is able to see everything in the database. But like the second that you have a user in front of the prompt that's trying to access a database where they're not supposed to see everything. So you could think as an example like a payroll database or an HR database or something like that. A lot of this technology doesn't work great. It has not matured to the point that works really well. The technology works well when everyone's allowed to know everything that they're searching. Like the model is allowed to take in all data, and then the user at the end can ask anything they want. It takes much more complicated schemes to make sure they don't see it. You're starting to see some startups pop up in that space to allow users to have access, use this AI tech across many different sensitive databases. It's a place where there's a lot of research going on. We're fortunate in that for us, our customers, we're not dealing with that sensitive of data. All the data we bring in, it tends to be public. Like, one nice thing about blockchain is that most of that data is public. We take in, a lot of on-chain data that you can just get on the internet. We take a lot of data in from public repos. We take in every court case in the United States into the database, very public information. We have not had to deal with this problem head on, but I know a lot of other startup founders who are trying to bring their technology into an enterprise environment that are kind of struggling with that as they try to get it out. It's one thing that's limiting their growth potential is the security ramifications. The other problem I have run into is kind of not understanding the problem you're trying to solve. I've helped a couple of companies who are trying to solve problems in their enterprise around reporting, basically. Like, how do I do more sophisticated analytics on the data I have? I want to use AI to solve that. And then they just kind of rush into the AI solution without really spending some time trying to understand the problem they're trying to solve. Like, what are the requirements for the AI engine before you deploy it? I mean, it kind of sounds like project management 101, but what I see out there today is a lot of companies rushing into just trying to make it work. As an example, I'm at a customer today where we deployed our tech, and they told us that we were the 26th AI solution they deployed. And that's the first one they deployed before it worked. And it's just, again, kind of about getting the requirements right and kind of understanding it. I've talked about some of the things we've dealt with. Like, one big problem, one big challenge that we have solved for a lot of our customers is around source data. So what data is coming into the model? Where is it coming from? And can you, when you get an answer out of the AI, can you point back to where that data came from authoritatively? And do you trust the source it came from? Again, if you just go take an LLM and kind of put all of the internet into it, that's a bit of a, the validity of the source is a bit of a problem. We take the source validation and verification very seriously and tag that data from each source all the way through. What that allows us to have is sourceable data. So you get a report or a recommendation out of our engine. We're using a third-party LLM, but you can click basically on any word and know where it came from, which is very valuable to our customers. And it's a place that I've seen other AI tools kind of fall on their face, because a customer gets a recommendation or gets an output and then they just have no idea where it came from. They can't source it back to the original data point that it came from. Another big issue is surprisingly tone. I have learned more about tone in the last 6 months than I care to ever know about. And so what I mean by that is literally the tone of the English coming back. Is it persuasive? Is it not persuasive? Is it written to where a fifth grader could read it or not? Does it make overly suggestive recommendations? I've learned a lot about tone, and what I found is that kind of the the closer you get to the lawyers, the more the tone matters, is what I've discovered. I think that's true for a lot of the solutions out there. We have really struggled to get OpenAI to deal with that. And you would think that you kind of just keep giving it new prompts until you get the tone right. It doesn't work super well. And what we found is that you can get good results on a Monday, but by Friday, using the same prompt just doesn't work. So we've had to make a lot of changes behind the scenes in our kind of pipeline to deal with it. But tone is important. We're translating into 16 languages. And so, I don't know French tone, but I need to know that the French results are also in the right tone, which is a bit of a challenge. And I'll talk about how we deal with that. Formatting is surprisingly, again, difficult. You kind of tell the LLMs how you want it formatted. They do a pretty good job, but it's not consistent, particularly when it matters. And this kind of points to the deterministic output. What we've found is that kind of regardless of the model we're using, we have a hard time getting deterministic results, meaning same results every time. We run about 100 million data points a day through various LLMs. We have customers that are literally running like a track changes results difference on a Monday versus a Tuesday of what we give them to say, hey, you changed your recommendation on page 161, paragraph 3, sub-bullet 4 changed in French. Why did that happen? Sometimes that happens just because the AI, the model nothing about the source data has changed. Nothing about the prompt going into the LLM has changed. It just interprets it differently that day for one reason or another, and we get a different output. I would say increasingly frustrating for us, and we've had to build, I kind of keep using this term rails. We've had to build kind of rails around that to make sure it doesn't happen. Same thing with hallucinations. It's a big problem. There's a bunch of companies out there looking at how to know that. The way that we solve the hallucination problem is we basically run all of our data through multiple models, and then we have them vote for the right answer. Okay, so we give it to ChatGPT, the current model, gives us an answer, then we go run it through 2 others, and we just see what the differences are and which one we can trust. It's not foolproof. There are companies out there building these kind of validators that validate it's not a hallucination. One man's hallucination is another man's fact. So that's another problem that we deal with a little bit. Yeah, so if you go back to this model, I lied to you a little. If you go back to this slide, I lied to you a little bit. I said that AI really only happens here. It's not really true. I mean, we run the AI results through a lot of other engines to know that what we got is right. So by the time one atomic piece of data moves through the pipeline, the reality is it's been through 7 or 8 models by that point. We can have a whole nother conversation about cost. We have another AI agent optimizing our cost behind this, which is another problem. So just maybe a few points on working with the various models that are out there. And I think the key point is just the bottom one. We are kind of constantly having this debate internally about whether we go take the new model from anyone in. So, I mean, they're iterating every day. The big R&D teams out there making massive improvements. You saw some charts on that earlier. Unbelievable work going on. The problem we have is that I have all those requirements on the front end. No hallucinations, no false positives, right tone, kind of all these big threshold requirements. One problem we have is that when we shift to the new model, all of a sudden, we stop meeting those requirements because we got to go tune all of our prompts to deal with that. And I'll talk more about that in just a second. So what we find is that we're a couple models behind always. Because the fear is that we bring the new model in and everything breaks. And we have SLAs we have to meet. So there's just opportunity cost of making those upgrades. If you're using the models just on a personal basis to get recommendations, you should stay on the bleeding edge, tip of the spear. For us, it's actually better to be a few versions behind. Just tends to be more stable. We've talked a lot about data engineering. What I find as an AI company is that I'm really a data engineering company. I'm trying to make sure I'm putting clean data in so I get clean data out. Fundamentally, we're doing prompt engineering. So we are, in a programmatic way, generating new prompts that tend to be very large into all of these different tool sets. We treat them as code. So we We basically write code that writes the prompts, but we have AI agents that do that. But we treat them as code and we version them as code and we monitor them very closely. We have gone through some audits with some of our customers and we find that they want to see the version history. That's one reason that's important. The other reason is that, again, we're always kind of dealing with changes going on in the models that we don't quite understand. And so we have to understand how our prompts interact with those changes. We think a lot about kind of the operational nature of what we're doing. We have a very small team. We don't want to add more people. So we have to basically automate everything. We find that we're like using AI to check AI, but checking AI with AI and checking the checkers with AI. Like it's just kind of this never-ending loop. We have a lot of observability tooling deployed. So kind of watching the watchers along the way. It's again, something that we have found that we didn't really recognize as a problem until we kind of got into it. But we need to know that the system is working as expected because again, one false positive, one hallucination, one bad tone, one bad recommendation, one curse word that slips through, like world ends. So we can't have that happen. So we end up with these kind of guardrails. So kind of the first line of defense for us is kind of static checking. So we write checkers that just do very simple checks in a static way without the help of AI. So like regular expressions and sentiment analysis and like solutions that don't require the AI. And then once we've done that, we run it through these other AI engines, what we call AI evaluators. I'll bring up the cost again. Like cost is a big problem. You know, when we started the company, the cloud companies issued us hundreds of thousands of dollars in credits to get going. We burned through those in 4 or 5 months, just kind of testing all of this. We're a venture-backed company, but it's not like we've got millions of dollars. So something we worry about. At this point, we can generate everything that we do, which is, you know, tens of millions of inputs, hundreds of thousands of runs, thousands of outputs a day. You know, our AI bill is now less than $100 a day, to give you some idea. And the way that happens is observability tooling to know where your costs are coming from and kind of optimizing heavily. I guess kind of final point is I didn't think I'd be running an AI company. I think I'm really running a data company. The space is moving very fast. The tooling, the capabilities of these new models are unbelievable. I think where we have found a nice niche in the market is supporting this great innovation that's happening with kind of the kind of enterprise support structure that's required. As I said at the beginning, almost all of our customers are doing this themselves. They just can't figure out how to do it at scale or repeatably or at low cost or securely. And that's kind of where we fit in. And we provide great value to them by letting them be compliant. It's kind of the first, this is the first time I've run a company, a security company, where I'm not just a cost to them. The fact that I can provide them regulatory information and regulatory compliance in a fast way allows them to go generate revenue faster. So I've kind of moved from the OpEx line of their P&L to the revenue line of their P&L, which is a good place to be.
Had internal discussions about fine-tuning on smaller models, like because you're using public models right now,
Yep.
and I know when you're thinking about cost, that's always the trade-off is, can you train on a small model and fine-tune to get it to do what you need it to do, or do you rely on the heavy lifting of these bigger models to do these tasks?
Yeah, we've looked at that, and kind of what we find is that the big models serve us well now because of how fast they innovate. There'll be a day that we move to the smaller fine-tuned models. We're just not there yet.
Have you run into any stability issues with the APIs?
Yeah, I ran that question. We have a customer right now trying to stick a SLA on us that we don't want to accept. And so I went and ran the data. You know, we've been down 12 minutes in the last year. So, and all those 12 minutes came from various models being down. So I would say no, 12 minutes is pretty good. Yeah. But something we're worried about. The reality is that our kind of underlying cloud-based infrastructure is less stable than the models because we just reality. Okay, well, thanks for the time.